Here we are with the third match of the league. We're looking at Weed Gang versus Punk Rotten. This is a Goblin versus a Nurgle team. Obviously, we had a Nurgle team in the last match, so I'm not really going to cover too much about that this time. But the Goblins are pretty interesting. They're one of the harder teams to play, that's for sure. But they're also one of the most unique. So I kind of like to go over that a little bit before we get into the match here. Looks like it was 0-2 in Nurgle's favor. Not a whole lot of armor breaks on either side, which is frankly pretty surprising for both teams. But I haven't watched this replay yet, so I'm sure we'll see what happened. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Goblin team real quick. So, Goblins are probably one of the more difficult teams in the game. They have 6 different players that you can purchase, which I think is the most out of any of the teams. I'm not sure if anybody ties for that. But even so, they have the lowest, one of the lowest overall strengths. It's kind of similar to Halflings, where their main player, the Goblin, doesn't really do a whole lot, and he's got low stats. But they have strong positional players that can really shake up the game, and there's actually just a lot of weird stuff going on that I'll get into here. So let's just go over the players. First off, we have the Goblin, just your basic Goblin. You can see immediately that he is 2 strength, which is below average. Now, what this means is that pretty much everybody on most other teams is going to end up having by default a 2 die block against you, which is not good. You know, we've talked about this before, where if you have a 1 die block and you have the block skill, that's a 1 in 6 chance of failure. 2 dice is a 1 in 36 chance of failure. You know, imagine having that every single time somebody attacks you. It's just not ideal. And it's going to result in you taking a lot more hits for sure. It also means that you're not going to be dishing out as many hits because you're constantly going to be rolling red dice in a 1v1. And you're going to need 2 of these guys if you want to have any hope of getting even a 1 die block, right? But despite that, there are other things on the team that kind of even it out. Now, first off, most Goblin players, this is on pretty much any team that features Goblins, not just the Goblin team. If you look at Orcs or Underworld Denizens, they have this as well. This is the right stuff skill. I'll spare you the details in the description, but basically what this means is that certain big guys in the game, which is going to be the big guys that are featured on the teams that the Goblins are featured on, typically trolls, are able to actually pick up a Goblin player and throw them across the field. I believe it has to be a short pass, maybe a medium pass, but it's a decent amount of distance. It's enough to actually, if you're at the line of scrimmage with the big guy, run the person that he's throwing into the end zone and get a touchdown, assuming they have the ball. And yes, you can in fact throw the player if they have the ball. It is one of the funniest things you could do in this game, and I love when it happens. In addition to that, they have dodge as a basic skill. Now, Goblins already have a pretty easy time dodging through tackle zones because of their stunty skill, which I'll cover in a minute. So really what dodge does for them is, instead of giving yourself a lot of rerolls, all that, you know, that is helpful, what you mainly have it for is as a defensive tool, right? This is kind of common on teams that have a lot of players that start with dodge. Amazons are another one to think about, where every player starts with dodge. And it's not so much that they allow you to more consistently dodge through tackle zones, although that is true. It's just every single time that somebody attacks you and they get that defender stumbles result, now it just pushes you away. So on a 1 die roll, they've gone from, by default, a 2 in 6 chance of hitting you and knocking you down to a 1 in 6, not including a both down. I don't include that unless they have the block skill, in which case things change up a bit, of course. Now, because of this, if you're able to get dodge and a block, of course, that is going to make you a very hard to hit player, and that's typically what you want to try and get on a lot of players. It's one of the strongest skill combinations in the game. You're so difficult to hit that if you can get the ball, it's just nasty, honestly. But unfortunately, the main goblin player on this team does not actually have access to general skills by default. They have to roll it on doubles, so the likelihood of them getting block as a skill is not as likely. Now, the third skill that they have is Stunty. Now, what Stunty means basically is that normally when you make a dodge roll, and you'll see this in the game when you look at the tackle zones that are being exerted by players, you'll see that if there's only one player covering a space, it shows a 1, and the more players that are covering a single space of their tackle zone that you have to dodge through, that number goes up. And essentially, when you are making a dodge roll from a tackle zone into another tackle zone, the difficulty of that dodge roll has a base value determined by your agility, and then there is an additional difficulty modifier that is applied, a +1 requirement for the roll based on how many people are covering the tackle zone that you are stepping into, right? So with 3 agility, if you are in just one person's tackle zone and you dodge into an open space not covered by anybody, that's a 67% chance. But if you were to dodge from a tackle zone into another tackle zone covered by one person, it would be a 50% chance. 2 people, it would be 33, so on. It goes down to 17 because, of course, if you roll a 6, that's a critical success, and you always succeed on those. What Stunty does is that you completely ignore all that. It does not matter what tackle zone you're going into, if any, you are always rolling the same difficulty for each dodge. So it makes these guys a lot more effective at dodging, despite the fact that they only have 3 agility, which is pretty nice. The drawback of this is that they're not as good at passing. They're going to have a difficulty modifier applied to that. And also, if they get hit and their armor is broken, they are more likely to be injured or knocked out. Now, the additional range that's added for the injury just results in a badly hurt, which basically means they're out for the rest of the match, but nothing else. But still, getting injured isn't great because, 1, you're losing a player for the whole match, and whoever hit you probably just got skill points, which you don't necessarily want. Moving on, the other kind of normal player that you have on a goblin team is the troll. This is, of course, just a big guy. You can see here, 5 strength, 1 agility, 9 armor, pretty typical. Loner, mighty blow, really stupid, just like the beast in Nurgle. Now, what the troll has that is nice is that he has regeneration, so he's already more likely to avoid being injured, assuming he even gets to that point. After all, it is pretty difficult to hit big guys. But he also has the throw teammate ability, which, as we said, allows him to throw a teammate that has the right stuff ability. There's some modifiers applied to this, not too important. Just the key thing to understand is that they can do it. It's not likely to succeed, but every once in a while it works, and it's pretty funny. Now, the troll in particular, this is not necessarily shared by other big guys that have the throw teammate ability, but the troll in particular also has this always hungry trait. Basically what this means is that every single time he goes to throw a player, there is a 1 in 36 chance that he eats the player instead and they die immediately and you are not able to heal them. Honestly, you're not supposed to be throwing your player that much anyway, so it's not that big a deal. It is incredibly unlikely that is going to happen. And because of the players that tend to have the right stuff are not critically important players because they're probably going to die from other circumstances anyway, so they're kind of expendable. It's not really that big a deal, but it can happen. Can cause a turnover. You never know. Troll here only has access to strength skills. Nothing else. Once again, not a very special unit. He's the same as a troll on pretty much any other team. Now, as I was saying before, the way that the goblins kind of make up for this overall strength weakness that they have from having all of these normal goblin players with 2 strength is that they have some strong positional players that field secret weapons. In this case, I'm only going to show off 2 because those are the only 2 that this player chose to bring to this match. But there are 2 other positional players that could be pretty interesting. Now, the first one, and this is arguably the most important player on any Goblin team, is going to be the Loony. Now, again, this guy has a secret weapon. And as I said back in our first video with the Dwarves versus the Lizardmen, secret weapon basically means that at the end of a play, they're sent off the field and they're red carded. Now, this allows you to have a player that's much more powerful than they would normally be able to be, but they're more limited in their usage since they are required to get sent off at some point during the game. But the interesting thing about Goblins is, as you'll recall when I was talking about the Dwarven secret weapon of the Death Roller, you can obtain a bribe as an inducement before every match. I think normally it costs 100,000, but for Goblins, it's actually half price, which means that they can much more easily get that. 50,000 is not a lot of money in this game when it comes down to it, and they can easily stack up multiple bribes per match and use them as a way to kind of keep these players on the field longer. Now, of course, the main special thing about the Loony is the fact that he has a chainsaw. Very long block of text here. I'm just going to read it off for you because it's pretty difficult to sum up. A player armed with a chainsaw must attack with it instead of making a block. Roll a d6. On a roll of 2 or more, the chainsaw hits the opposing player. On a roll of 1, it kicks back. Make an armor roll for the player hit by the chainsaw, adding 3 to the score. If the score beats the victim's armor value, then they are injured and lying prone. Furthermore, you may add 3 for a foul action when the player makes an armor roll and when an opponent makes a skull during an attack on the player. This skill cannot be used with Frenzy or multiple block, and if used as part of a blitz action, the player cannot continue moving after using it. Alright, so basically what this means is that even though they only have 2 strength, they're not making normal blocking dice rolls against players, so they don't have to worry about the strength of whatever player they're attacking. It doesn't matter. They only have to worry about their strength in defensive sense, because if somebody comes and attacks them, it's going to be a normal dice roll, as you would see from any other player in the game. But for these guys, they just roll a die, and they get a number, and they add 3 to it. And if that's more than the enemy's armor, the enemy gets knocked down, and you immediately start rolling to see if they got injured. Which is very, very strong. This guy can eliminate low armor players like nothing. What this also means is that he's very good at fouling. Now, I haven't covered fouling yet in these videos, but I will show it off in this video because it's kind of a critical part about playing the Goblins in a way that allows them to win, in that you really need to be trying to kind of kill everyone that you can, just like with the Death Roller on the Dwarf team, like I said. The other player that we have on the team we'll be watching is the Fanatic. Now, this is the strongest player in the game with 7 strength, just like the Dwarven Death Roller. The way the Fanatic works is very strange. Essentially, this is just a goblin that goes out on the field, and he has a big-ass ball and chain that he spins around and around, and he's just there to hit anybody and everybody. Because of this, when you go to move him, he's spinning around so fast he doesn't get to choose where he moves. He just moves 1 space at a time. He does this 3 times. It's going to be in cardinal directions. It's going to be up, down, left, right. And if he runs into somebody, whether that be friend or foe, he makes a normal dice roll block. But of course, because his strength is 7, it's very likely that he's going to have 3 dice to roll against whoever he's hitting, and probably at least 2. It's going to be a very rare situation when he doesn't have this. Now, if you hit them, you go ahead, you knock them down, you roll for an armor roll as normal to see if you injure them. He doesn't get any bonuses like that, but he does knock them down very frequently. And if he runs into a player that is already prone and on the ground, he pushes them away and then once again makes another injury roll on them. Check for against armor, all of that. So he's a menace on the field. He's hard to stop. He really kind of keeps people out of a certain area, and he's just going to be hitting everyone that comes near him and dishing out the damage. So when you're playing against this, you really want to try and avoid him. Now, one thing to note, however, is that if for some reason he does get knocked down, whether he somehow miraculously fails a dice roll, which is unlikely, or somebody manages to actually get enough strength to take him down, that means that he is immediately going to have that big ass ball and chain fall right on his face, and he is going off the field. He's going to get knocked out guaranteed, if not injured. He also can't use a lot of different skills because you just don't have a lot of control over this player. Sounds like he's not that great, but in reality, he can be a great tool to have on your team. He's a little bit difficult to make use of, and that's kind of the case with a lot of the players on the Goblin team, is you have to have this sort of... It's a strange play style. You really have to have an understanding for the game that allows you to kind of make use of these abilities and turn the odds in your favor. Because at the end of the day, the Goblin team is not about fighting fair, they are about cheating. And you really need to understand how to cheat to make it work the best. Okay, that's about all I have to say about the Goblin team for now. Let's go ahead and check out the replay and see how it went. Alright, so here we are in the match. I just watched as the Goblin team went ahead and set up the formation for themselves. It looks like they're going to be defending on this first kickoff. Also looks like we have the very sunny weather, which means there's not going to be a whole lot of passing because it's going to be even harder. Though, to be honest, neither of these teams are good at passing to begin with, and it would be unlikely even without this modifier that they are going to be playing a very heavy passing game. See that the Goblins brought 5 rerolls, whereas Nurgle brought 2. 5 is quite a lot. I'm not sure you need that many on Goblins. I maybe would have saved a little just because, you know, normally when you make a team in this game, you want to start at 1,000 team value. That puts you on an even playing field. But as I was saying before with the Goblins, and this is true also with the Halflings, though it's a little bit different why. You're pretty much weaker across the board. You're going to be at a disadvantage at a 1,000 team value when you're on even footing with the other player. So a big part of the strategy to playing a team like this is that you want to try and use that difference in team value to score yourself some free money to spend on inducements. Especially with the Goblins, seeing as that they actually get cheaper bribes at half the rate for inducements, and they really want to get a lot of these so they can do a lot of fouling and they can keep their secret weapons on the field longer. Now, we can see that the Goblin player has done a pretty standard formation here. He's got decent tackle zone coverage, not a whole lot of gaps or anything, so nothing to worry about there. Though, as they are Goblins, it's probably going to be pretty simple to knock them aside. Another thing to note is that he is playing defense right now. So he's gone ahead and put his trolls and the fanatic on the line of scrimmage. That's good. That's pretty much where you want them. And just like he's got right here, you're going to want one space between your fanatic and anybody else on the line, because as I said before, if he moves in that direction, he can hit teammates. So you have to be very careful that you are not going to be hitting on your own people, since you, of course, want to be hitting on the enemy team. Riding up against the Beast of Nurgle, this is totally fine because, well, the Beast of Nurgle only has 5 strengths. Even though he's a big guy, he's still going to be suffering 2 dice rolls when this fanatic comes at him, so it's unlikely that he's going to have a good time here. Having the Looney on the line of scrimmage, now, this might seem like the obvious thing to do when you first try out a team like this, but you have to remember that he only has 2 strengths, and that chainsaw only helps him offensively, so he's just as weak as any of your other Goblins when he is on the line of scrimmage like this. That makes it a little bit scary to use him like this, because since you're playing defense on these Goblins and Nurgle is going to have the first move, I would find it very likely that he's just going to get hit immediately. And when he does get hit and knocked down, that chainsaw is probably going to fall right on his face and probably injure him pretty badly. He also has that stunty modifier, remember, which means that he's more likely to get knocked out and injured. And since you want these guys to be on the field as long as possible to dish out as much damage as they can, it's really in your best interest that you don't have him in a dangerous spot like this. Now, if we're talking about the general strategy that Goblins are probably going to use here, it's definitely going to be making this first half last as long as possible and using this Looney to eliminate as many players as he can. We remember from the last match that Nurgle does not have an apothecary for their team. They rely entirely on regeneration, which the Rotters do not have. You'll note that the Nurgle player in this match is using pretty much an identical team setup to the player from last match. It's pretty typical of Nurgle to use this composition. There's really no reason not to use it, in my opinion. I guess you could drop the Beast of Nurgle if you wanted to in favor for, I don't know, another Goatman or more players or something, but I think the vast majority of people will probably start their Nurgle team like this. So, with that being said, again, we have to understand the problem players on Nurgle are going to be these Nurgle warriors with their high strength, although granted against a Goblin team, everybody's high strength, right? And the Beast of Nurgle. Now, normally these guys would be hard to take out, but because you are using your Looney, you're getting +3 on those armor rolls. And because you don't have to worry about the strength, you're just as likely to knock them down as any other player. Technically not true. I mean, if they have a higher armor value, they're going to be harder to knock down, but you know what I mean. Like, you don't have to worry about hurting yourself. It's going to be a 1 in 6 chance you hurt yourself no matter what. That's just how it is. So having a good amount of rerolls for that Looney to stop that from happening is good, especially since he doesn't have the lower trait. You have your trolls filling in that big guy niche as needed, plus you have 2 of them, which is already annoying to deal with for the other team. And the Fanatic is going to easily clean up anybody who comes near him. So you have that center of the field well under control. And with wise use of your tackle zones and keeping your goblins kind of spaced out and just covering the area that your opponent wants to go, it'll be pretty difficult for them to run the ball in while you focus on using your extra players to kind of back up the chainsaw and have him take out players strategically. My strategy here would probably be start off by having the Looney try and make as many blocks as possible against these Rotters since they have the lowest armor value. They have double injuries, they don't have regeneration, you're very likely to hurt them, so you could just take them out, whittle down that player count until you have a significant advantage. From there, you can also start using your Looney to foul players who are not getting injured, especially these higher armor characters like the Nurgle Warrior or the Beast of Nurgle, because you can strategically place your goblins to back up the Looney when he's fouling. Probably want to save that for the later part of the drive though, because it gives an opportunity for the ref to red card him. But again, if you're starting off with a lower team value, which is a viable strategy, you should already have a couple bribes to back him up, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Other than that, you're just going to want to use all of your goblins to slow the opponent down, ideally not by marking players right on top of them in the tackle zone like you would on a different team maybe, but primarily, especially since they're so good at dodging, by screening, which is something of an elven tactic, but you can use it on teams like this too. Basically means that every turn when the enemy pushes up and they step into your goblin's tackle zone, you're just going to take one step back and dodge out of it, and then they have to make that move again. It really lowers the amount of space that they can move, it lowers the amount of attacks they're going to be making each turn, and it forces them to blitz more. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the Nurgle team sets up his players in response to this. Bearing in mind again that Nurgle is going to be receiving the ball on this first kickoff. Oh, okay, the sunny weather went away, so we don't have to worry about those bad passes anymore like I was talking about. Normal weather. Ball lands center of the field. Good for Nurgle. Okay, real quick, it looks like Nurgle is pretty much okay with just rising up to the challenge and fighting here. Can't say that I am particularly surprised. If I'm going to be playing Nurgle here, I would have to say that, again, as far as strategy goes, you want to get rid of these secret weapons as soon as possible. Those are the most important players on the enemy team. Whether that's going to be through injuring them, if you can, or just scoring a touchdown as quickly as you can, either one doesn't matter. Same thing, just get them off the field and don't deal with them for the rest of the match. Since he's just kind of, you know, meeting might with might here, I have a feeling he's just going to go for all the hits that he can. Goblin teams, if you're not careful, can just be easy skill points for a bashy team like this, because you're going to have your Nurgle warriors going in and just hitting these little 2 strength 7 armor guys, getting easy injuries across the board, right? Of course, they do have dodge, which, again, makes it harder than it might seem to actually hit the player. But, I don't know. If you know what you're doing, you can typically get a lot of injuries against a team like this. Alright, right off the bat, he goes and he hits the loony, just like I said. Gets that hit. Luckily, armor doesn't break, so he's going to stand up next turn. Rolls doubles, get 2 pushes. Immediately going to push them against the sides, it looks like. Where's he going to take the ball? Ooh. Fails the pickup roll. He gets it, okay. Playing towards the right side of the field already. Looks like he's trying to back up his Nurgle warrior to help with fighting this troll. I don't know if you need to do that. You know, one thing I will say about the starting formation that he chose here is you kind of have to choose whether or not you want to try and fight these trolls with your Nurgle warriors, because, you know, they are 4 strength, but the trolls are unlikely to get injured. So since you have so many other targets on the field that you could be hitting for these easy injuries, it may have been worth just putting a rotter there to mark the troll and then moving your Nurgle warriors freely and going after the squishier guys instead. I guess it depends on how desperate you are to keep this troll in place, really. But a Nurgle warrior can pretty much keep a troll standing in place to the same effectiveness as a rotter. So now that I think about it, may have been a better idea to move this guy off. It also may have been a good idea to keep the beast of Nurgle off the line. Normally you don't want to do that because you want your big guy to help you control the center. But now that I'm thinking about it, to be honest, you're so outmatched in terms of strength here in the center of the field that it might be worth it to pull your Beast of Nurgle off the line. And since he has this tentacle move, which can really counteract low strength, high dodge teams like this, it may be worth trying to move him in a position where he can stop them from moving around a lot and keep them locked in place. And again, he has Mighty Blow. He's going to get more injuries on guys like that. Alright, Goblin player backing up, it looks like. Unfortunately, foul appearance procs on the loony. That's not good. Marking with the Goblin here. Alright, moving the Fanatic. And you can see the Fanatic kind of just moves wherever he wants, right? Fortunately, didn't hit anybody that time. And gets the bolts down against a rotter. Injures the rotter, which is nice. That's skill points for the troll. And the troll will get back up next turn. So already you have a player advantage for the goblins. That's nice. You saw right there, 3 dice. So easy to do against 2 strength teams like this. But he didn't hit him even though he had all those dice because of that dodge. That's just how strong it is. And both down. I would say normally you want to try and move the ball carrier first, but he didn't have a whole lot of space to actually send him to begin with, so this is about as much as you could have expected. I suppose before you decided to go after this goblin... No, you kind of did have to make that hit before you started moving your ball carrier through, so... You know, it is what it is. Goblin goes in with the loony, gets the hit, stun. Alright, you can see what I'm talking about here, where the goblins are kind of just backing off one space. He knows he's at that disadvantage, so he's using his mobility to just kind of keep moving them back and make those tackle zones be a nuisance so that it's harder for the Nurgle player to actually move forward. Which is exactly what you want to be doing with a team like this. So this is very good. Goes for the troll, gets a push. Gets a hit with the Fanatic, just a push though. So as I said, you don't have direct control over this Fanatic. He kind of goes where he wants. So the kind of strategy here is that when you're hitting people around the Fanatic, you want to see if you can push them into it. Which can be tricky, but if you know how to manage that and do it well, you can have this guy just dishing damage out left and right. Alright, going for the crowd surf on the side of this Nurgle warrior, making space for the ball carrier so he can come through. Probably could have kept going, honestly. I suppose that these three could have come and kind of gained up, but depends on if you want to make the going for it rolls or not. Moves his Beast of Nurgle in right here. That's nice. He's keeping pressure on these goblins, and it's going to be very difficult for them to get away with the tentacle trait there. Just like that. You can see the power of Stunty going on here with these tackle zones. No fear. Oh, and that going for a roll. Does he re-roll? Doesn't re-roll. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about what he's doing right here. You can see that he's trying to build a wall in front of the ball carrier to stop him from advancing. I like that, but this could be done in a way that's more effective. When you just kind of make this little wall that's one player wide like this, you're really limiting its usefulness. So if I click on the Pestigore here, can I? No? You want to show the tackle zones game? Alright, I guess it's not going to show tackle zones today. That's unfortunate. Okay, well think of it this way. All of these goblins are exerting tackle zones in a space immediately adjacent to them, which means that this whole area that I'm circling right here is covered by tackle zones. But this area over here is not. So it's pretty easy for the Pestigore to just go around right now and not even be, stopped by this, and you're committing 4 players to this strategy. Now, what you can do instead is if you were to take this goblin right here and move him here, and then take these 2 goblins and make another column of 2 right here, think about how that changes the tackle zone coverage. You would have tackle zone, player, tackle zone, player, tackle zone. Now you have these players in these little columns covering 6 whole spaces. And you don't need to do those 2-person columns, but it gives you some security for being blitzed, especially against a team like this that outstrengths you so heavily. If he only did 1 player instead of these columns of 2, then he could just come in with his Nurgle warrior, knock the guy to the side, and create a little avenue for the Pestigore to run down. But when he makes them these columns of 2, that will kind of negate that entirely. There's not really a way to get around that, and that significantly slows them down. So if you were to spread them out in these columns of 2 like this, you can actually spread them out across the entire field if you have enough players and just completely stop the advance of the enemy team. And that is by far the strongest screening strategy that you can do against something like this, and that's definitely what I would be doing here. So he has the right idea, but the technique is just a little bit off. Start with the Beast of Nurgle going for a hit on the Goblin, just gets a push, unfortunately. Nurgle Warrior goes in for the easy hit. Kind of needs to clear him out now because you just pushed that Goblin towards the ball carrier. That creates a path for the Pestigore. Oh, gets a hit on the Goblin. Now, obviously, Goblins have a serious problem here because if they don't stop that ball carrier from scoring, they're going to lose both of their secret weapon players. I would say, can we look at the movement ranges? It's not going to show me any movement ranges or anything. 1, 2, 3. Unfortunately, that Looney is just 1 away from being able to hit the Pestigore. So, in this case, I would say it would be really important that the Goblins crowd around this Pestigore and go for a blitz to knock the ball out of his hands. There needs to be an aggressive play made here right now to stop this guy from moving forward, because once you get to this point in the field, this screening strategy, it's a method for slowing people down. It's not a method for stopping them. As the match goes on, especially if you're not able to use it effectively, where you're basically limiting them to like 1 space per turn, you're going to end up in a situation where you need to make the play, otherwise you're going to lose to attrition, which is kind of how this is going right now. Goes to cover this Rodder, I'm not sure why. Oh, and going for it, roll fails. Uses his reroll. Oh, that's really bad. Well, I'm guessing there's going to be a touchdown right here then. That's not what you want to see. I don't know why he chose to try and put these goblins around the router there. Like I said, the Pescore is definitely the most important person to be hitting. I am assuming he was trying to set up to hit the router, but I think it would have been better to just focus on hitting this guy. Probably take one goblin, put them down here, take another goblin, put them down here. Of course, they're going to be covered by the router, so they won't assist. If you can get another goblin, get them to the side, and then hit from the front of the Pescore, knock them back, hopefully knock them down, get the ball out of their hands, and that's going to slow the enemy team down a lot. But now I'm guessing there's probably just going to be a touchdown here. And then he's going to lose both of his secret weapons, which is really unfortunate. When it comes to the early matches of a league, this is really all they have going for you on a team like this. Nurgle's unfortunately not really getting the rolls that he wants against these players. Despite the fact that they are 7 armor, he's just not really getting the knockdowns he needs. And there's the touchdown for the Nurgle team. And as I said, because we have a 1,000 versus 1,000 team value here, there's not going to be any bribes in play, which means that both the Fnatic and the Looney are guaranteed out for the rest of the match. And there they go, red carded by the ref. So you can see right here exactly what I'm talking about. You see how the Nurgle team is set up in these columns of 2? He's spreading out his tackle zones very effectively because he knows that he's going to be kicking to the Goblins. The Goblins have very high dodge chances, so it's unlikely that he's going to be able to slow the Goblins down by marking them. So what he's trying to do is create as many tackle zones as possible that the Goblins have to go through, increasing the odds that they are going to fail a roll, and he will be able to make up for that. Perfect defense. He can set up his players again if he likes. Oh, this is nasty. So what happened here is that the kickoff event and the kick was a great combination for the Nurgle player. Typically, you don't want really short kicks like this because it gives the other team a chance to kind of advance very quickly with the ball. But because he got the perfect defense allowing him to reroute his players, now he could set up to put a play right where the ball landed. The only better thing that could have happened here is if that the blitz kickoff event happened, which would actually allow the Nurgle team to get a free move before the Goblin team did. Yeah, this is going to be really tough for the Goblin team with the way this is set up. Oh, but it's a touchback. See, you just had the perfect defense event happen where Nurgle really committed heavily to playing this side of the field because he had the perfect kick, really. But then things went your way. You got the touchback, and you can give it to any player on the field. And the problem here is that you still played right into where he just heavily fortified his entire defense. I really would have given that ball to somebody on the complete opposite side of the field. This side of the field is way, way weaker right now. You can take your troll, knock this guy out of the way, block the router. You can set your goblins up to cover this area in the middle so that he can't come and meet you. And if you gave this guy the ball, he could just run down the lane immediately. and that would have been well on its way to a touchdown. So, unfortunately, I think that was a very poor choice of player to give the ball. And he goes for the pass. Wow. I am amazed that... What were the odds on that pass? That was a 17% chance for pass, and he got it. Holy shit. That's incredible, actually. He's got stunty. He's already got -1 to his odds of passing, and he's in 2 disturbing presence zones, so he had a -2 modifier applied to that. So those are the worst odds possible for a pass, yet that went through, and he had to re-roll on the catch. That is crazy. Wow. I guess he recognized that he needed to do that, though. He needed to get the ball away from that side of the field. Okay. Didn't make any hits or anything. Interesting. Probably could have hit with the trolls marked with your goblins to set up some easy hits, kind of start breaking the line. Could have moved your ball carrier over to the other side of the field. Could have reinforced. There was a lot of things that could have happened here. I should also say that although that pass did end up working, another thing that you could have done is just walked over to that player and done a handoff, so it was only a catch roll. It would not have netted you the pass skill point that you got from passing, but it would have been much, much more reliable in that situation. But hey, it worked, so who cares? All right, Beast of Nurgle going for the hit. He's got Mighty Blow. We're going to see an injury. Only a KO. Wow. Unlucky. You have much higher chances to injure these players compared to most other players in the game, so when you have Mighty Blow and you're still not injuring, that's just bad luck. Nurgle, of course, going straight for the enemy ball carrier, as you should be. Easily potential for a 2-touchdown half here if he can act quickly enough. He's got 3 turns, including this one, and that ball is well within distance of the end zone. Of course, the dodge rolls of the Goblins. Oh! Loses on another going for it roll. You got to be careful with these going for it rolls. They say they're 83%, and they are, but when you're making so many of them, you're just bound to start failing them eventually. However, ball's on the other side of the field now, away from the Nurgle team, so it's probably unlikely he's going to be able to grab it. Going for a roll for the ball, trips. Like I said, these things are dangerous. Oh, he does get the ball, though. And he is in range for a touchdown on the next turn. Unfortunately, gets a really stupid roll on the Beast of Nurgle there. And he's making the correct move. He's getting that ball carrier slowed down. No touchdown on his watch. Probably could have gone for a blitz on the ball carrier if he really wanted to. This right here is probably overcommitting. Once you have a couple guys on the ball carrier, you just need to focus on making sure the rest of the team doesn't come to help him out. But I don't think this touchdown is going to happen here. It's going to be pretty hard for the Pescore to get out of that. He needs to go forward, which means he needs to go into this zone if he wants to get that touchdown. And that's a bad dodge for him. So, unlikely, I think. He's probably going to try it, though. And I don't blame him. Yep, there's the trip. No surprise there. Really seems like these going for it rolls are kind of the bane of the Goblin team right now, unfortunately. Which is a shame, because I think that otherwise, I'm actually liking the strategy a lot. He does understand how to use the tackle zones effectively, which is pretty tricky when you're new to the game. So, he's making good moves, just maybe being a little bit too dangerous. But then again, the Goblins are all about the gambling, you know? It really is about the risk. I wouldn't say the Goblins are entirely a luck-based team, but they definitely are the team that Joey Wheeler would pick. All right, playing offense here. He's going to be receiving the ball, the Goblin player. Really committing to playing right up against the line here. Perhaps a little bit dangerous, but you could get a really nice play if you can get the ball to one of those players. Quick snap, one adjacent square for a free move. That's a pretty good kickoff event. This is a bit dangerous having them on the edge like that, but being able to move all your players one space for free is really nice. Especially since they avoid tackle zones when they do this. We are in the second half now. All rerolls are back. Does he do the handoff? No? Okay. Right here, could have handed off to the Goblin in front of him, although who knows what the catch chances are. Oh, and once again, that going for it roll. Man. This is what I'm talking about. You know, they have high odds, but they just come to bite you in the ass after a little while. Even if a roll is a good chances for you, it's not worth making a roll if you don't have to. That looks like it was an accidental dodge from the Nurgle player, unfortunately, because 17%, that was... Whew. I'm going to hope that was an accident. That would have been near impossible to have gotten. Alright, back to the Goblin player. Incredible. I love stunting. Ah, but it doesn't always pay off. Oh no! I'm badly hurt. He'll be okay. Ball still in play. See, in that case, I would say what you could have done instead is before you started moving these guys, you had the ball carrier right here and you had 3 dudes. One of them was already on the rotter. You could have moved these 2 goblins around to support your other goblin and just have him push the rotter out of the way. You know, that would have been a 2-die block, pretty reliable. Then you can move your ball carrier through and he would have been, you know, over here probably. And he's already a good distance ahead. Then you would just need to focus on having your other players kind of go through and start setting up in a way so that these free players at the back of this column are not able to split off and come after your ball carrier. Otherwise, I like the play. It's daring, it's agile, you know. Agility teams are just built different sometimes. Not that Goblins are necessarily an agility team. Fails to pick up the ball, unfortunate. Oh, and the dodge does not pay off. Can you get it? Gets on the reroll, but the second one trips him. And that's what I'm saying. You got to be careful about this kind of stuff because when you're making a lot of rolls, you know, sometimes it can be worth it to see if you can set up and knock some people out of the way sometimes. Even though you're good at dodging, it's not going to happen every time. And you can take risks, but you still want to limit your risks where possible, you know? As well as, you know, I've said before, that is important when you're playing this game. You try to take all of your safest actions first to set up that final risky action and make sure you're not stuck in a position where you're going to be losing players because you didn't have a chance to move them like this. Because now we're getting to the point where the Goblin player has a player deficit, and that's going to really hurt him. Now, he does still have goblins on his side of the field that he can break off and use to slow down this Pestivore. Oh, got an injury with the Rotter. That's the first injury for the Nurgle team, surprisingly. I really thought there would be more going on, just because of how easy it is to actually injure these Goblin players, but bad luck on the rolls, I suppose. Oh. Oh. I'm not sure if that was an accidental move or not. That can happen when you're clicking too fast. You don't realize there's a dodge roll. I've done that myself quite a few times. Pushes another goblin off the field. Could be risky having them so close to the sideline like that. Now, being that they do get agility upgrades, you can get sidestep pretty easily on players like this, which makes it near impossible to actually knock them off the side of the field, so it becomes... Oh! And the Nurgle warrior is dead! Whew! Second kill of the league. But does he regenerate? And it looks like he does. 50% chance to just not take that, you know? That's really nice. It's one of the nice things about playing a Nurgle team and an undead team and whatever other teams have regeneration. I can't remember, but even though you don't get an apothecary, sometimes you see that dead result and it just doesn't happen. Yeah, at this point I think you just need to focus on slowing down the ball carrier and doing the screening strategy from the first half. That would work out really effectively here, I think. But now the Goblins are down so many players, I don't really see this happening. Not sure why he's moving his players down the field like this. Maybe to get them away from the Nurgle team, anticipating that this is just going to turn into a bit of a clobber fest, which ideally is what Nurgle wants, so that would make sense. When you are in a position that you don't feel that you can stop what the other team is doing and you're a squishy team like this, you do want to try and keep those players away from the bashers so that they are not able to be farmed for skill points off injuries. So though normally when there's this many turns left in the game, I would say that you could probably still go stop the ball carrier and kind of turn in your favor, but since all your players are on the other side of the field, it's going to take forever for them to get over there. Yeah, I think he's just trying to stay out of the danger zone. Goes for another dodge with the troll. I'm not sure why. Probably just could have hit the Rotter. And yeah, the Nurgle player here is just buying time. He knows he's got the touchdown. Oh, fails the going for it roll. Gets knocked out. Unfortunate. The players that he wants to be leveling up the most with those injuries are not even really on the field now. Last turn, yeah. Goes for a touchdown. Well, pretty quick match. You know, not a whole lot to say. Honestly, I think that both teams actually played their respective teams pretty well. I think there were just a lot of risks taken that probably didn't need to be taken, and that kind of spiraled out of control there. Go ahead and take a look at the skill points here. We got an MVP on the Fnatic for the Goblin player. That's actually really nice because Goblin players do not, or the Fnatic I should say, does not normally gain skill points by hitting people and injuring them like other players do. I don't believe they do anyway, because I don't think it counts as a normal attack. Can't quite remember. So it can be difficult to get skill points on your Fnatic and your Looney. I know that the Looney definitely doesn't get skill points from hurting people because it doesn't count as a block, it counts as a special action, which doesn't give skill points. So pretty much the only way the Looney can get skill points is by passing or touchdowns or just the MVP reward like this. So having 5 on your Fnatic is nice. Hopefully you can level them up and get yourself Grab or some other nice strength skill. Mighty Blow would probably be good too. MVP on a Rotter for the Nurgle team. Unfortunate. I guess that's 7 on alignment, so he did level up. That means you could make a kicker or something. And he got 2 touchdowns with his Pestigore, which means that he can get himself a level up on that as well. So not very good skill point spread, but the Pestigore is a pretty important player to level up. That lets you start getting touchdowns a lot faster now that you can get a mutation or something. Unfortunately, no level up on the Goblin team, but actually there is a decent skill point spread. I mean, 10 skill points, that's nothing to scoff at, so. And all in all, I think he only got badly hurt in duels, so he should still have all of his players for the next match. So, yeah, I would say actually played pretty well on both teams. I really liked in the first half how the Goblin player was going and doing a lot of that screening strategy that can be really strong when done effectively. I think it just needs to be refined a little bit and probably not take as many risks, and that could have gone a lot better. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Hope you had fun, and I hope you learned something.